I recently watched the new Indiana Jones movie, Dial of Destiny, and while it didn't blow me away, there was one scene that did. It was the flashback to Indy in World War II. The de-aged Indy was so good, I couldn't tell it was Harrison Ford. And that got me thinking, how does de-aging work? Hi, I'm your host, and welcome to my channel. Now some of you know that I worked at a major studio lot for years, and even produced a feature film, so I have some insight into how things work around here. That's what I'll be sharing with you in this series. Behind the screen, my goal is to take the mystery out of how movies and television work. If you want to learn how to make your own movie, check out the link below. But for now, let's jump right in. When I heard about the de-aging tech used in Dial of Destiny, I was curious how they pulled it off because it was seamless. In fact, I didn't realize until halfway through the movie that they were using CGI to de-age Harrison Ford. The visual effects supervisor for the movie, Richard Bluff, explained their process, which included extensive research, testing, and creating a digital double of Ford. They took over 300 photos of Ford from different angles, including his eyes. These images were then used to create a 3D model of him. Then a group of artists spent months sculpting the face to match a young Indy from the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. They also used a reference capture suit covered with 90 cameras that could track every movement of the older Ford. This data was fed into the computer along with the de-aged 3D model and then rendered frame by frame to match the camera movements in the movie. This meant that the de-aged Indy would move realistically like the older Ford, but with a much younger face. But the amazing thing is that all these visual effects were created by only 120 artists, working for a total of about 600 days, considering the massive amount of work involved. That's not a lot of people. It's impressive because when I worked in visual effects, it was common for a single artist to spend weeks or even months working on just one shot. Now if you watch the behind-the-scenes featurette, it makes it look easy peasy. In reality, it took about 4 years to complete the visual effects for Dial of Destiny. Now what's amazing is that this technology can be applied to anyone. You don't need to be Harrison Ford or any other famous actor. In fact, the technology has gotten so good that Netflix used it to resurrect 3 Billboards actress, Woody Harrelson, in the final season of the show. Now, here's where it gets interesting. By law, actors can't work more than 16 hours a day, which means that capturing all the reference footage needed to recreate them digitally would take multiple days of shooting. But what if we had a way to capture an actor's performance quickly and accurately? Enter volumetric video. Now this isn't some crazy Star Wars technology. It's actually been around for a while. In fact, the first volumetric videos were captured in the 1980s. The technology works by shining a bunch of lasers onto a person and then recording the light patterns. This creates a 3D representation of the person, which can then be manipulated like a digital puppet. But unlike regular video, volumetric video captures the depth and complexity of human features like skin and hair. Now this can be done with a normal camera, but the results aren't nearly as accurate or detailed. So how is volumetric video different from regular video? Well, imagine you're looking at a wall. With regular video, you see the wall as a flat surface. But with volumetric video, you see the wall as a collection of points, each with its own depth and location in space. This gives you a much more realistic and immersive view of the world around you. So volumetric video captures the depth and complexity of objects, allowing you to manipulate them in 3D space. This could revolutionize the way movies are made, because it would allow filmmakers to capture performances digitally without having to shoot them in person. It could also make it easier and cheaper to add special effects, because the computer would be able to read the depth and geometry of the object more accurately. Plus, if the actor isn't available, you can always use their digital twin instead. The best part, this technology is already being used in the movie industry. Disney used it to bring dead characters back to life in the Lion King remake, and Sony Pictures used it to create a digital double of Tom Holland for the movie Uncharted. And let us not forget about Netflix's recent use of it in the last season of Stranger Things. In the final battle between Eleven and Vecna, Eleven uses her powers to pull Vecna into the Upside Down and defeat him. But Vecna's body starts to disintegrate, which makes it clear that he's dying. However, after a few seconds, Vecna's body regenerates and he's able to escape. This scene was made possible by using volumetric video of Jamie Campbell Bower, who played Vecna. This allowed the crew to capture his facial expressions and movements as he was performing the scene in real time. They could then add the special effects later in post-production. making it look like Vecna's body was regenerating in real time. Volumetric video is also being used to train AI robots to act like humans. The idea is that if a robot can learn how to mimic human behavior, it could become more useful and reliable in everyday tasks. Some researchers are even trying to create robots that can express emotions through their facial expressions and body language. So it seems that volumetric video is the future of filmmaking and AI. In the meantime, though, traditional visual effects are still being used in most movies. For example, in the new Indiana Jones movie, Dial of Destiny, a lot of the action scenes required practical effects, like pyrotechnics and stunt work. But the visual effects team had to enhance these scenes with For example, when Indiana Jones crashes his car through a market, the team had to add smoke and debris to make the scene more immersive. They also used CGI to remove unwanted objects from the scene, like power lines and cables. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why don't they just shoot the scene with no cables and power lines? Well, the truth is that removing these objects in post-production is much easier and cheaper than trying to avoid them altogether. Here's why. When you're filming a movie, you have to worry about a lot of things, like lighting, camera angles, and blocking. But one of the most important things to consider is safety. And that's why you see all those cables and wires in movies. They're there to keep the camera crew and actors safe. Now, it might seem like a hassle, but it's necessary to prevent accidents and injuries. For example, in the new Indiana Jones movie, there's a scene where the characters are hanging off the side of a building. The actors were obviously strapped in with cables to make sure they didn't fall, but the crew had to remove those cables in post-production to make it look realistic. Another example is the car chase scene. The cars were rigged with explosives and other pyrotechnics to make it look like they were really crashing, but the crew had to remove those effects in post-production to make sure the audience didn't think it was a real explosion. It's not just safety that cables and wires help with. They also help with the overall quality of the movie. For example, in the new Indiana Jones movie, there's a scene where Indiana Jones is swinging on a vine. A cable was used to make sure he didn't fall, but it also helped the camera crew get the perfect shot. Overall, cables and wires may seem like an inconvenience, but they're necessary for safety and quality. They help keep everyone safe, and they help the camera crew get the best shots possible. Speaking of cables and wires, did you know that the microphone is one of the most important parts of any film production? Without a good mic, you won't be able to capture the dialogue clearly, which will ruin the movie. But the problem is that mics are bulky and expensive, and they can be difficult to set up, especially if you're filming on location. That SYA company called Zaxcom has developed a wireless mic system that's changing the way movies are filmed. Their system consists of tiny transmitters that can be attached to the actors and a receiver that records the audio. This eliminates the need for bulky cables and allows filmmakers to capture high-quality dialogue anywhere. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Behind the Screen. If you did, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Also, let us know in the comments section what you want to see in the next episode. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.